So, good afternoon in India, good evening everybody. This is our third lecture on the explanations of the dhyana method, and we have been dealing last time with the 5 hindrances, and as far as I remember we have covered the first 3, and today we will finish this section and start to talk about the dhyana. Now, what is very important to understand is that these 5 hindrances or nivaranas, they appear only, according to Abhidharmakosa, they appear only in kame nivaranani, in the 5th chapter of Abhidharmakosa, Anushaya chapter you can find. So, strictly speaking, they are what holds one to the sphere of perception dominated by the 5 senses. Whether we like it or not, as long as we are in the sphere of perception dominated by the 5 senses, our mind will always be distracted. So, according to Abhidharmakosa, the same 5th chapter, the defilements of the kama dhatu of the sphere of perception dominated by the 5 senses, they actually all related directly to the kama asava, to the inflow and outflow of impurities into the mind and from the mind due to desires, due to mind, literally, because raga comes from the Sanskrit root ranch, which means to be colored. So literally, because our mind is colored by desire for the objects of the 5 senses, which are called panchaguna. So whether we like it or not, when we stay in the sphere of desire, we are affected by in one way or another, by the vikshipta chitta, by the distracted mind. And that's why all the defilements, no matter whether it is based on kamaraga or based on the excitement and so on, they are colored by the kama asava. Now, when we cross beyond the kama dhatu, then it is said in Abhidharmakosa, we still have, it is very important in order to understand this text. Here in this text, it comes also very clearly to expression that in the dhyanas also we may have what you may call impurities. But these impurities, they will not be affected by sensual desires. They will be they belong to what we in Buddhism call bhava asava, the inflow and outflow of impurities to the mind due to holding to our existence. This holding to our existence is much more difficult to overcome. One has to be a perfect Buddha to do so, to overcome then the inflow and outflow of impurities based on desire for the objects of the 5 senses. Once one has crossed the 5 hindrances entered the Rupa Dhatu, the perception based on subtle forms, which are mental forms. Then, in this sphere, these desires for the objects of the 5 senses, they don't look very real. That is why it is said that this is the sphere of the concentrated mind. And in the sphere of the concentrated mind, we may have the defilements, we may have the asavas, inflow and outflow of impurities due to holding to existence and due to ignorance. These have not been overcome, but the holding to the panchaguna, to the 5 desires, is gone. They seem to be too gross. And what is gross? The concentrated mind wants to discard. This is a difference between the concentrated mind and the non-concentrated mind. The concentrated mind wants to discard the desires of the 5 senses because its object is mental object, and mental object is always more subtle than the object of the 5 senses. According to Abhidharma, you have a comparison. The touch of the 5 senses with the object is like 2 horns hitting each other. And the touch of the mental faculty with mental object is like 2 cotton balls rubbing each other. So when we experience this touch, we will not be very interested into the gross kind of touch. Gross kind of touch is connected to a more gross feeling. And a gross feeling has a more clear link to the daushtulyam, to the grossness, and to the lack of prashrabdhi, to the lack of pliancy. The coming into the process of liberation, coming into the process of meditation, is the process of discarding, especially emphasized in the yoga tradition, and in Buddhism, in Yogacara, which is closely related to the Indian yoga tradition. Discarding the daushtulyam and experiencing by virtue of wisdom and concentration more and more pliancy is the process of liberation. This process, according to the Mahayana or Bodhisattva path scriptures, is still not completed even in the stage of the Arahat. It is only completed in the stage of a perfectly realized Buddha. So there is always a lot to learn. So we have covered the Tina Mida, Sthana Midam. Tina Mida is the direct result of ignorance. Also in Abhidharmakosa you will find the same idea. Now what we have not mentioned, and it is before we go to the next Nivarana, which is because a question comes, why Tina Mida and Udacha Kukucha, they are put together as one obstacle. Why sloth and torpor and excitement and worry become one nivarana. Now, in some books you will find that tina mida, sloth and torpor, is always akusala. In some books you will find, including Abhidharmakosa, including Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, even including Theravada tradition, Vimutti Magga, you will find that tina is always akusala, but mida is neutral. Mida means bodily, corporal lethargy, and tina means a mental lethargy. Now, corporal lethargy is not necessarily unwholesome, unhealthy state. When we work very hard, we become tired and it is impossible to meditate. Yet, because the bodily sensations directly linked to mental and in a way directed by the mental, some meditators, scholars consider both to be akusala, like Abhidhamata Sangha. Both have their good reasons, because finally the bodily sensations are governed by mental factors. And mental factors together, they are also called body. We will see it while discussing the first and second dhyana. There is a lot of confusion about the bodily feeling and the mental feeling. But of course, they are very closely related. This is especially important if we want to understand Indian or Chinese medicine. They work together. Now we come to the excitement and worry. That is number 3. Number 4, sorry. When the hindrance of excitement and remorse, here it is called remorse, sometimes it is translated as worry, arise, one should contemplate in this way. Now, according to Abhidharmakosa, again the 5th chapter, the excitement is the result of desire, and remorse is the result of doubt. This is very interesting. So to say, they are both linked to one source, which is non-appeasement. In Chinese they call it Pu An. The excitement and worry or remorse, they all related, they appear because the mind is not appeased. If the mind is not appeased, they are not there. So as we have explained that the opposite of tina mida, of sloth and torpor, is aloka sanya, is the perception of light. So in case of the excitement and remorse, they related to the same opposite, the same pratipaksha, which is vupasama, according to Abhidharmakosa also. When the mind is appeased, no excitement, no worry. When the mind is not appeased, excitement, remorse, worry will come. What is remorse? Remorse means we are thinking of what we have done and what we should not do, what we should do and have not done. And of course, this is related to worry. So they come together. And of course, directly or indirectly, we have explained that in the sphere of perception dominated by desires, all is related to desires. So directly or indirectly, all these 5 nivaranas, they also related to the complex of liking and disliking. This is very important to understand. The mind is excited, the mind thinks, we have a doubt because we have liking or disliking. That is the root of all defilements in the karma we have explained. When we have greed, we will surely have also anger. When we have anger, we will surely also have greed, desires. They cannot appear at the same moment, but they are closely related in the mind processes, especially in the mind processes in this world of ours, in this world where most of the thinking is linked to our 5 senses. And this world is the world of the distracted mind. According to Abhidharma, the world of distracted mind is the world of paritapanya, of a little wisdom. The world of subtle forms and of no forms is the world of mahapanya, the great wisdom. And the world of nirvana is the world of unlimited wisdom, apamanapanya. So we want to reach the world of the unlimited wisdom of nirvana, or from the non-dualistic point of view of suchness. Then the way to go is to pass through the great wisdom of concentration. That is why all the scriptures always emphasize, no matter in what tradition, be it the Buddhist yoga, Jaina yoga, Hindu yoga, samahitam chitam yatha bhutam pashyati. Only the mind which is concentrated sees things as they really are. This is a key. So the ability of concentration increases the ability for wisdom. And the essence of wisdom is, of course, differentiation. We are in the state of moha, in the state of unclarity, delusion, because of our wrong differentiation. That's why the path, the middle path starts with samadhi, sama sankappa, the right view and right thinking. But for the right view and right thinking, we need discipline and we need wisdom. So what is important here, he links, Kumarajiva links directly this obstacle of excitement and worry to manifoldness. I have translated manifoldness based on desire, which means prapancha. I have in Chinese, they have a wonderful translation for prapancha, which means xi lun, playful, discussion in the mind. Most of the time, actually, in this karma, we spend our time in playful discussion of the mind. Should I eat this? Should I not eat that? Should I meet this one? Should I not meet that one? Should I need this or I need that? All this is from the point of view of yoga. This is prapancha, expansion of sanya, expansion of perception by desire, endless. And this is also the process of excitement. So what is the cure for all this? Of course, appamana, non-negligence. In Dhammapada, you have a wonderful verse, pamado machuno padam, appamado amatam padam, ye appamata namiyanti, ye pamata yata mata. Those who, the base for the death is negligence. Base for the nectar of immortality is non-negligence, another synonym of mindfulness. One who is negligent, one who is non-negligent, one who is negligent, one who is not negligent does not die. One who is negligent, even so he is living, he's like being dead as far as meditation is concerned. So this negligence is directly linked to the complex of either Tinamida or Udacha Kukucha. And they are linked to desire and anger. Desire, liking and disliking. Now we have always comparisons which are very significant. The most easy way to explain the deep principle is by comparison. And in the Agamas you will find quite few comparisons for the 5 Nivaranas. Here in this work sometimes they completely match with what you find in the Agamas. sometimes they are different. Like in the Agamas, Tinamida is like the surface of the water being covered by weeds. Here it is covered by cloth, but it speaks about the same thing. The comparison about excitement and worry is the same. The water disturbed by waves makes one's face invisible. What is one's face? Very important to see. What is one's face? One's heart. And what is the name in Buddhism for samadhi shiksha, for cultivating concentration? Adhicitta shiksha. The adhicitta shiksha. Adhicitta is the real mind. The boss. The mind is a boss. What mind? The pure mind. Now we come to the question which I have already touched. Sensual desire, resentment, and doubt, each individually forms one hindrance. Why do sloth and torpor, along with excitement and remorse, both form hindrance combined together? So we have partially answered this question already. The answer of Kumarajiva is slightly different. As the strength of the vexation of sloth is weak, it will not obstruct the mind unless it is assisted by torpor. So we have mentioned already of the close link between the mind and the body. According to Buddhism, and even according to holistic medicine, Chinese and Indian, all the bodily functions are related to the mind. That mind which controls the bodily functions, controls it from the Buddhist point of view through the mental factors which make the content of the mind. Mind without the mental factors is a big mystery. Very difficult to find out what is a mind without the mental factors. When we find the mind, we find the mental factors. And the mental factors control the bodily functions. So when the mental functions are weak, the bodily functions will also weaken. When the bodily functions are weak, it will affect the mental functions also. This process is wonderfully described in holistic medicine, especially in Chinese medicine. You have all kinds of the souls belonging to different organs, all controlled by the heart. Shen, then you have po, hun, and so on, I. But all these, they just work in the service of the emperor, of the ruler, which is the heart. And the heart, in Buddhism, the heart cannot function without the mental factors. They are like these organs. This view is from the more bodily medical view. This view is from the mental view. Of course, Buddhism is the mental science. But it shows how in medicine as well in Buddhism, the mind is linked to the body. They work together. In comparison, you will find in Hindu scriptures, also in Buddhist scriptures, like a blind man and a cripple. The body is a blind man. I cannot see anything without the mind. And the mind is a cripple. It cannot go anywhere without the body, especially its subtle form, the prana, the chi. So they are interconnected. So similarly, excitement without remorse will not be able to form hindrance. This is more difficult to understand. But it has some deep psychology behind it. Why? Because according to Buddhist psychology, the remorse, worry is always connected with daumanasyam, with the uncomfortable mental sensation. When we excited, we also have, even so we may be excited by seeing something that we like, at the background we will also have uncomfortable mental sensation. This is very subtle. So this is how they complement each other and become, in a way, inseparable. So according to Abhidharmakosa, also in the Anusaya chapter, these two, they have same opposites, same nourishment, and the same result. The same opposite we have already explained. The opposite of Tinamida is Aloka Sanya. The opposite of excitement and remorse is Vipassana, the mental appeasement. And they have similar nourishment. If you eat too much and so on, you're likely to have Tinamida. If you think about useless things, you're likely to have excitement and worry. So they have the same nourishment. So we have covered this force. We have still one question. If one has committed evil deeds and is unable to repent, it should not be hindrance. Again, we come to another discussed question in the Abhidhamma. According to some yogis, scholars, the kaukrityam kukucha is always akusala. According to some, and in a way, majority, in Abhidharmakosa, Yogacara, Bhumi Shastra, even in the Abhidharmakosa, kaukrityam kukucha is neutral. It can appear in a positive mind, it can appear in a negative mind. Because of remorse, we may decide to do something very positive. But anyway, both have their good reasoning. So, as opposed to the Southern tradition, or most of the Southern tradition, there are also some exceptions. This kukucha, worry, is always unwholesome. According to the Northern tradition, as far as I have read, almost without exception, it can be positive and it can be negative. This is a difference. Now, we have mentioned before, due to first hindrance and the second hindrance, they are obstacles to the Shila Shiksha. They are obstacles to discipline. The Tina Mida is the obstacle for shamatha. Sorry, the Tina Mida is the obstacle for, anyway, when the mind is concentrated, it starts to think. It is very easy to find the tendency of thinking in the concentrated mind. Why? Because the concentrated mind is very close to the base of the mind. So shamatha is the opposite of excitement and worry. But it will ripen only, according to Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, when the Tina Mida has been abandoned. The Vipassana is the opposite of Tina Mida, but it will be perfected only when the excitement and worry have been abandoned. And now we come to the doubt. Doubt is obstacle to what? According to Abhidharmakosa, doubt is obstacle to the penetration of the Four Noble Truths. Now, in Buddhist tradition, again, those of you who have studied Zen and so on, the great doubt is the base for Zen practice. So doubt can be very, very positive. But what is meant in Buddhism by doubt means doubt in regard to 8 objects. They are called Sadeya Vatu, the basis for the Buddhist faith. If you want to understand this passage, it should be very clear. What is a base for the Buddhist faith? Of course, the triple gem, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, the past 5 aggregates, present 5 aggregates, future 5 aggregates. That is dependent origination. That is the 7th. And the 8th is the Shikshapada, the basis or the main teachings of the Buddha. The main instructions here means sasana of the Buddha. How to discipline and so on. So these are the, if these objects are objects of doubt, it is always, from the point of view of the Buddhist, it is always akusala, an unhealthy state of mind. Because it will prevent concentration and wisdom. Wisdom, object of wisdom being the 4 Noble Truths and dependent origination. When we doubt them, we cannot be real Buddhists. Of course, we can be real Buddhists, but in the sense, conventional sense, but not in the real sense of becoming open to realization. So there is also a discussion in Buddhism, doubt gives no pleasure in this life. Again, doubt, according to Abhidharmakosa, is also always connected with Dhammadipa, with unpleasant mental sensation. Same like worry. So doubt gives no pleasure in this life and leads to hell in the next life. This is a bit of an exaggeration, but anyway, we learn by getting some samvega, and the aim of the teacher is to give the disciples the samvega. If you want to understand this text, we have to see this very clearly. Kumarajiva is trying very hard to push his students to hard practice, which is the only way. So this kukucha is compared to water in turmoil. Same, you will find same comparison in the Agamas. When the water is not in turmoil, we don't see the bottom. In other words, we don't see the adhicitta. We don't see the boss. When we don't see the boss, we have no real access to pure mind. According to Buddhism, finally, we study shamatha, vipassana, sila, shiksha. We study because the aim is purification of the mind. There is no other aim of the Buddhist path. And in fact, of all religions. So, you have the beautiful verse in Dhammapada, Saddhena tarati ogam, apamadena anavam, viryena dukkham ucheti panyaya visujati. We cross the floods, which means nothing but the inflow and outflow of impurities into the mind, by having faith. We cross the ocean of samsara by practicing non-negligence, mindfulness. We go beyond suffering by practicing right effort. And all this is for what? For the purpose of being purified by wisdom. Panyaya visujati. And this is why where the doubt comes in. The object of wisdom in Buddhism are the Four Noble Truths. If we have doubt, we will never realize it. And the realization of the Four Noble Truths is the middle path. And the middle path is for a Buddhist the only way. There is no other way. So we have covered the 5 hindrances today, and next week we will go into the jhanas, starting with the first jhana. And when we are in the first jhana, no more nivaranas. When we are in the nivaranas, we are not in jhana. This is a difference. So first, Kumarajiva had to explain the nivaranas. Only then the jhanas make sense. We have to understand the nivaranas well to be able to know what is the state of jhana, what is the state of upanidhyana, which is the meaning of dhyana. We will explain next week. So that much for today. Are there any questions?
Yes, Bhante, there are a couple of questions, and I will request everyone, in case you have a question, to type it in.
We have still some time, so let us go into the.
You would like to continue? Yes, please.
We still have time.
Yes.
So I have covered the most important aspects of the 5 hindrances, and because our time is very limited, let us pass to the first dhyana. You will get the text, I think, in the next days, so that you're ready for the next lesson. Now, how do we get to the first dhyana? According to Abhidharmakosa, the first, second, and third dhyana is only a preliminary stage to the real dhyana, which is the fourth dhyana. For a Buddhist practitioner, he should strive for the fourth dhyana. Fourth dhyana is the most important, but we will not get there before passing through the first, second, and the third dhyana. The fourth dhyana is the aim. And Buddha very often explains first the practice of discipline, then the practice of jhanas unto the fourth Rupa Dhyana, or sometimes until the Arupas, until the Bhava Agra, to the highest Arupa Dhyana, neither perception nor not perception, and then Vipassana. This is a standard in the Agamas. Now, how do we get into the dhyana? What is the procedure? How do we remove the 5 hindrances, which are hindrances to perception of the subtle forms? We don't perceive the subtle forms as a base of our sensations. In the sphere of subtle forms, the sensations become very subtle. First dhyana more subtle, second dhyana more subtle, third dhyana more subtle, fourth dhyana perfect. So the mind, on the base of perfect sensation, is completely purified. That's why the fourth dhyana is called, for example, in Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, is called Nirvana Sadrisha. It is not Nirvana, but it is like Nirvana. Why it is like Nirvana? Because in Nirvana is no place for attachment to sensation. In the fourth dhyana also no place for attachment to sensations. So it is temporary going beyond attachment to sensations, while nirvana is the definite going beyond attachment to sensation. This is a difference. And this is importance of the fourth dhyana. But in order to get to fourth dhyana, we have to pass through the first dhyana. So the training for the first dhyana is the most important one. When we have mastered the fourth dhyana, it is not so difficult to work on the second, third, fourth and arupas. Of course, on our level of very imperfect yogis, we will never get a full apana. Full apana, you are, if you believe the text, you are, so to say, completely cut from the five senses. This is beyond our capacity. We would have to stay in caves for many, many lives, like if we believe the Jatakas, the Buddha himself did. So the perfection in dhyana is, so to say, the privilege of the Buddha. Not even the arahats have such a perfection of the dhyanas. But if we have the dhyana, the process of vipassana becomes much easier. If we don't have the dhyana, the process of vipassana is indeed very difficult. That's why in most of the scriptures, Buddha never, actually in all scriptures, with only one exception, called the Samyutta Nikaya, Susima Sutta, it is admitted that one can attain nirvana, become an arahat, one can become a Buddha, even without having practiced the dhyanas. But normally in all other scriptures, the dhyana is the passage to vipassana. And how do we get into dhyana? by practicing one-pointed mind, one-pointedness of mind. According to Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, the habit of one-pointed mind becomes samadhi. The habit of one-pointed mind becomes samadhi. In the Indian tradition, of course, samadhi has many, many meanings. Among others, samadhi also means liberation. In Indian tradition, if someone goes into the samadhi, when he dies, he is liberated. So, of course, the samadhi is a shiksha. It is a learning, very, very long learning. Especially if we want to practice the bodhisattva path. According to Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, the practitioner of the bodhisattva path is different from the layman. In what sense? From ordinary layman. A bodhisattva can be also layman. There is layman bodhisattva, there is bhikshu bodhisattva. But ordinary layman and the bodhisattva, no matter whether bhikshu bodhisattva or layman bodhisattva, according to Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, what is the difference? The ordinary layman finds pleasure, highest pleasure, in the enjoyment of the five senses. The bodhisattva finds pleasure in shamatha, in the practice of the dhyana. According to Theravada tradition, this is very important to understand. We will maybe talk about it. It is not directly related to our text. But since Kumarajiva was one of the greatest propagators of the bodhisattva path in China and in the Central Asia, and you will find in the coming chapters many references to the superiority of the bodhisattva path. We have already had some. So in the bodhisattva path, in the Theravada path, the practice of the samadhi, samadhi, is explained as the practice of the 8 samapatis. In the 8 samapatis, the mind is merged into the object, be it the subtle form object or the formless object, and so to say, it cannot move. So you will find in the Theravada Abhidhamma, the explanation, one has to go out of jhana to practice samadhi. In the Abhidhamma it is explained, the jhana is like those who are protecting the Durga, the fortification. They go and rest, they fight to defend the city, and when they are tired, they go into jhana. Protecting the city is practicing the vipassana. When they are tired, they go into jhana. It's like going into these fortifications at the small towers called tourette, from French, and they go there and rest for a while in order to have again power to fight. To fight means to learn to penetrate the truth of suffering. By observing the impermanence. Now, according to Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, among others, but also Abhidharma Samuchaya and so on, you will find the idea that this jhana, where the mind is bound to the object, is not a perfect dhyana, because there is no freedom of mind to go as it wishes from one object into another. When mind has freedom to go from one object into another, only when one has the abhinyas, the supernatural powers. When one has supernatural powers, mind has a power to go from one object into another and does not lose the power of the dhyana, especially the fourth dhyana, which is a base for supernatural powers, or most powerful base for supernatural powers. Now, we have a different perspective. So if we want to understand the practice in Northern Buddhism, which is directly or indirectly linked to the concept of alaya, which is a base for all we experience. So, getting merged with the object, it does not necessarily need to be a desirable thing. One should practice it, of course. In that sense, it is desirable because it makes the mind powerful. But because the mind is not free, being bound to the object, it can be obstacle to wisdom. We will find, if we want to understand this text, we will find the references to this in especially when Kumarajiva speaks about the arupa dhyanas, the formless dhyanas. We should keep this in the background. This training in the dhyanas is very important, but it implies a certain danger of being bound to the object, and being bound to the object is not a desirable state of mind. Because in dhyana, the mind cannot move. It merged with the object and it cannot move. And in order that it merges with the object and cannot move, we will learn in the next lesson, it needs the service of vitarka vichara. This is a key, especially vitarka. The manifestation of vitarka, according to Abhidharma, the Pachupatana, is conducting the mind to the object. When we can only get jhana if we systematically conduct the mind to the same object. If we don't do that, unless we have trained before, we will not get the jhana. So vitarka vichara is the condition for dhyana, but when the dhyana is attained, as we will see, it becomes the apalaksha. Apalaksha means that which makes a dhyana gross. The undesirable element of the dhyana. We will see in the coming lectures, and let us finish here. Now let's go to the questions.
Thank you, Bhante. So there is one question. The participant says, thank you, Bhante, for these teachings about prapancha. Could we use the translation mental elaboration or mental proliferation for prapancha?
Both are good. Both are good. It's very difficult to find a better term. Both are good.
Okay.
You can also say manifoldness of perception. You can say all these terms, but prapancha is prapancha. It is very, very difficult to find the exact term. So it is maybe better to translate it by going around one word, but just saying expansion of, I translate it by expansion of perception through desires. In Chinese, they, as I have mentioned, they translate it as Xi Lun, which means rejoicing at the mental proliferation, rejoicing at the mental discussion. We have a lot of mental discussion, but when we rejoice at it, and rejoicing in Buddhism means attachment. When we rejoice at it, so that means proliferation. Another question?
Yes, please. So the next question is, when you say mind without mental factors is a mystery, you mentioned that
yes, sure.
when you were teaching. So the question is, in the absence of objects of mind, can mind be posited as existing? And some Buddhist teachers or tenets seem to suggest that consciousness or mind exists from its own side. Do object and awareness establish each other?
Of course, there is awareness, they are objects, but these objects, they are differentiated in regard to their specific qualities by mental factors. This is clearly explained in Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, in Abhidharmakosa also. We distinguish the Vishesha Lakshana of objects, the particular characteristics of the object, by the service of the mental factors. And on the base of these, the mind can grasp the Samanya Lakshana, the general object, which of course in Buddhism means impermanence and so on. So we can only experience impermanence and particular characteristics of the objects, suppose a hardness when we touch something and so on, color when we see something, only when we grasp the object. And this is the job of attention, of manasikara. In Sanskrit, manasikara or manaskara is actually the making object in the mind. We become attentive because we make the object in the mind. Now, according to Abhidharmakosa and to the Northern Buddhism, especially the bodhisattva path, explaining the bodhisattva path, this is very important. The shamatha is when the mind does not move. And the vipassana, we will find it in the fourth dhyana, the mind also does not move. So it is called unmovable, not injita. First, second, third dhyana, the mind is still injita, is still moving. Fourth dhyana, not moving. When we don't grasp the object, when we don't pay attention to the peculiar characteristics of the object, so where is the mind? This is a very intriguing question. So in the tradition of the bodhisattva, the main meditation is on the meditation on the mind being like space, being like a mirror. It only reflects, it only contains, but it does not get engaged in vitarka vichara and manasikara. According to the Bodhisattva Abhidharma, the Mahayana so-called Abhidharma, the Buddha becomes Dharmakaya because he goes beyond manasikara, beyond attention, and does not mean necessarily that he has no attention, but going beyond attention, he has no attachment to attention, because he has no vasanas, he has no habits, and he has no vitarka vichara, according to Northern Abhidharma. Buddha, no vitarka, no vichara, no manasikara. Oh, what kind of mind is that? That is a big mystery. Where is the mind when we do not pay attention to any object in particular, and when we do not paying attention to any object in particular, with attention starts the process of cognition. When we don't pay attention and don't move the mind in a certain direction, where is the mind? So, good homework to be done. Any other question?
There is one more, and in case any of the participants would like to ask, please do type your question in. We have some time. Bhante, this one is about terminology again, where the second noble truth is
Samudaya.
it's either called, so cause of suffering or the truth of the origin of suffering. Now, the participant is asking, is there a difference intended?
No, that's
with
same.
Respect to this?
They are synonym. They are same. Samudaya means literally arising, arising together, some.
Yes.
And this arising is the cause of suffering, and arising is explained in Buddhism on the basis of thirst. Because there is thirst, this samsara arises. Samsara is what we experience with this impermanent mind. Or in the original scriptures, the Buddha never defines nirvana as a mind. This is very important to understand. But nirvana, to understand nirvana, still the best tool is a mind. We don't have any other tool. And when the nirvana is explained, of course, then the mind or no mind is no more a question. But as long as we don't understand nirvana, we will be always intrigued by dualities, mind and no mind. But actually nirvana is beyond both mind and no mind. So it is anabhilapya, not impossible to explain. It is same in all Buddhist traditions. Only in the northern tradition, the nirvana explained the absolute from the point of view of attainment, but from the point of view of the highest truth, paramartha, the nirvana is suchness, beyond duality. And it is very reasonable. Any other questions?
No more questions today after this one.
So we will transfer merit for the benefit of all sentient beings, and looking forward to see you next week again on Wednesday, and you will all get the materials. Huh?
Yes.
So we can discuss the dhyana. If you have any questions, please prepare.
You do that.
Eta vata chamehi sampatam punya sampadam sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Eta vata chamehi sampatam punya sampadam sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Eta vata chamehi sampatam punya sampadam sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Aka satta chabumatha deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chiramarakantu lokasasana. Aka satta chabumatha deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chiramarakantu desana. Aka satta chabumatha deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chiramarakantu tumamparam. Devo vasatu kalena sasa sampati hotu cha pito bhavatu loko cha raja bhavatu dhammiko. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. Please take care. Be careful not to get this epidemic called COVID.
Yes, Bhante.
And see you next week. Now
Thank you.
in this country here, the epidemic is getting into a real swing. It is very bad situation now. I hope in India it is getting much better now.